A Korean man in a suit walks up the hillside alley between the shacks in a black and white film clip. The man's gaze is directed downward and he holds a cloth bag in one hand. Around the man walking up, shacks with quilted tent roofs are visible in the vicinity, and the modern multi-story buildings are visible in the distance. The scene changes, and the man stands on the hilltop, looking out over the village before he collapses. The photo shown here is a scene from the 1961 film Aimless Bullet. Located in Itaewon, Seoul, Haebangchon, built by the refugees from the Korean War, was made up of two shacks. Due to the steep slope of Itaewon, they had no choice but to build houses in the steps on the foundation called chukdae, stacked with stone. I read the novel Aimless Bullet, the basis of the film, when I was 12 years old and a middle school student, when I had just moved from Busan to Seoul. The characters in the novel were family that fled from North during the war. I remember reading it with curiosity because it reminded me of my late maternal grandfather, who was a displaced person, and it was about a place I never heard of. Two scenes from the movie Aimless Bullets appear on the left and right. On the left, an older woman on a wooden floor is gazing into another woman who appears to be younger. Between them is a steaming pot. On the right takes in front of the hotels near an American military base. A Korean woman wearing a modern dress is standing, crossing her arms back with her head downward. On the other hand, a white cis-male American soldier is staring at her directly, smiling. The movie features the female characters suffering from the scars of war. One of them is a mentally ill mother who misses her hometown and only repeats the word "let's go." And the other is Myung-suk, a daughter who becomes a prostitute to American soldiers to support her family. Haebangchon, the village of shanty towns and shacks where the family lives in the movie, casts a stark contrast to the neatly trimmed streets full of English signs near the American military base, where Myung-suk visits to work as a prostitute. At the same time, my mother and younger siblings watched an American movie called The West Side Story, which was released in the same year. In the scene from the film West Side Story, a group of young Puerto Rican cis women and men dressed in suits and dresses gather in a circle to dance. Set in New York's Upper East Side in 1957, the film explores the conflict between the Sharks, a gang of Puerto Rican youth, and the Jazz, a white gang, as well as the romance between a cisgender teenage girl and boy with two different racial identities. Amidst the dancing dance and song, as a child I asked myself many questions. Why did Puerto Ricans have to immigrate to the United States? And why did Puerto Rico become part of the United States? And finally, why did Puerto Rico have to be poor in the first place? The two films had many conflicting points. The Aimless Bullets was filmed in black and white and was influenced by the film techniques of three countries: Germany, Italy, and the United States. And the other end, The West Side Story was a color film based on a Broadway musical. Aimless Bullets were filmed on a very low budget and was scheduled to be screened at the Berlin International Film Festival, but was censored by the government at the time for portraying the Korean society in an overly gloomy manner. In a contrast, The West Side Story won several Academy Awards and was a huge box office hit. The left shows a black and white photo of a black American man wearing a beret and a suit standing in front of the demolished site. Next to it is a flyer written in Spanish with pasted on an abandoned door. Here I thought about the historical background in 1961. At the time, urban renewal projects were being carried out throughout the United States around the time of World War II, and the areas where people of color, such as blacks and immigrants, lived together were often targeted for demolition. On the right is an archival image from Seoul Museum of History showing the demolished Haebangchon. The hill that is covered with stones that were used to consist chukdae. Similarly, Korea also experienced major changes, with many underdeveloped neighborhoods being demolished, residents moving out, and new buildings being built. In addition, there is a record that in the mid 1950s, the government judged that the sight of the comfort women crowding around the capital city gate was unsightly and moved them to Itaewon. This alley, which later became known as the Hooker Hill, was also where transgender sex workers worked and lived. A map of the Hooker Hill drawn in black and white. In 1969, US President Richard Nixon announced his foreign policy toward Asia in Guam, which was called as Nixon Doctrine. This photo was taken on a plane where President Nixon and his wife were about to depart for China after giving a speech in Guam. They were waving to reporters and onlookers. The Pak Chung-hee regiment, which was in power at the time, was concerned about the withdrawal of the U.S. military, so they implemented the Camptown Cleanup Project as a countermeasure. Through this policy, it followed a system that existed since the colonial era, managing the woman's bodies and sexuality as resources and making profits. Along with the resident restoration policy, these political gestures further strengthened the binary gender distinction and contributed to the nationalistic control of women's bodies and reproduction capacities. However, this history was not simply due to the relationship between the state and the people. In the process of forming and maintaining the cap towns, there were conflicts and cooperations between various groups and individuals. And because of this unique characteristics, Itaewon has a very distinct landscape from other camp towns. Here, I would like to quote the writing of Ruin, a transgender human rights activist and researcher based in Korea. The U.S. military presence at Itaewon as a camp town is an ideal space for non-normative gender sexuality actors to live compared to other areas. In other regions, practices that are not tolerated there, thus practices that are neglected or expelled, acquire the visibility of invisibility. It is always experienced as something that is not known and absent through the embodiment of denial, although the members of the group perceive its presence or absence. Experiencing absence is not for practice of confirming absence. It is the embodiment of the norm that even though one knows that there is, they need to believe that there is none, should be none, and that one should not know and pretend not to know. And everything that is considered absent is projected into the space and category that is considered the category of disposal. As a region, Itaewon or the camp town plays this role. Visibility and invisibility are like double-edged swords. Those who are dispossessed lose the opportunity to be visible. Not being visible means not having a capital and power. However, being visible entails becoming an object of desire and entertainment for someone with power, while also establishing a new capitalist relationship. The black and white photograph shows one of the marches taking place on a street in downtown New York. At the center of the photograph are two figures, a Latinx trans woman with dyed medium length hair, holding the end of the banner with one hand and a handbag with the other, glaring at the other woman. The other is a white woman with bangs and glasses, raising her fists at the person who is looking at her. The other marchers around them are looking at them or away. During my research, I learned about the magazine called Drag. Drag was a magazine for the trans and drag queen community, founded in 1971 by Lee Brewster, another drag queen and activist, and published by the Queen Liberation Front, a queer activist group until 1983. The magazine was read in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, West Springfield, Boston, Miami, London, and Paris, and often featured the articles about trans and drag culture outside the United States. While browsing the magazine's archives through the New York Public Library's digital collection, I came across an article about the activist named Sylvia Rivera. Sylvia Rivera was a Puerto Rican and Venezuelan American transgender sex worker and civil rights activist. She was one of the leaders of the Stonewall riots in 1969, and along with her comrade, Marsha P. Johnson, founded STAR, an organization for homeless transgender women of color and render shelter. While attending the fourth anniversary of the Stonewall riots in 1973 with her colleagues, Sylvia encountered a conflict with trans exclusionary radical feminists, also known as TERPs. According to the article, Sylvia was told by the activists that transgender people and cross-dressers were shameful for women and boycotted from the parade. In the black and white video, Sylvia is seen speaking into the handheld microphone at the rally following the Pride Parade. Sylvia has a brightly dyed shoulder length hair and is wearing a tight fitting long dress. Here's a quick excerpt from Sylvia's speech.
I will not no longer put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that. I do not believe in a revolution, but you all do. I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Storehouse on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C, apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! Gay power! Louder gay power!
Experiencing this constant interference and exclusion, Sylvia attempted suicide out of despair and anger and became addicted to alcohol and drugs. She disappeared from the activist movement for 20 years and was forgotten. She resumed her activities in the 90s and died of liver cancer in 2002 in a hospital. Back to Itaewon, in this black and white image of the Hooker Hill, you will see many transgender clubs, and behind them is the Central Islamic Mosque. This was built in 1976 by the Park Chung-hee government and also was the foundation for the visit of the Saudi Arabian Prince Naif and his party in 1979. When the oil shock broke out in 1973, the Park Chung-hee government came up with a measure to ensure a stable supply of oil. At the same time, the Middle East emerged as a new business partner for many South Korean construction companies, and as a result, many South Korean construction workers work in the various parts of the Middle East and earn the oil dollars. This business later expanded to other fields such as electricity and civil engineering, and became deeply involved in construction sites in the Middle East, contributing to the urbanization process of the region. The black and white side view of the Usadan Row 14 Gil at Itaewon. If you walk around the Itaewon, you can see that the height and the total floor of area of the buildings have not changed, and the appearance of the Seoul in the 1970s has been maintained. This is because construction activities were restricted due to the designation of the Hanam Redevelopment Promotion District, and you can easily observe the traces of the architectural trends of the time. One of them is the use of cement. The first cement factory on the Korean peninsula was built by Onoda Cement, the largest cement company in Japan. After the Japan-Korea annexation treaty, the first cement factory was built on the Gyeongin Line Railroad in Seongori, Dobong-gun, Hanam-do in December 1919. At the time, the production capacity was 60,000 tons per year, and a cement industry on the Korean peninsula developed it in response to Japan's need to invade Manchuria and China after World War I. This black and white photo shows houses in rural village being built in with the cement walls and old-fashioned tile roofs known as kiwa. A Korean male worker is passing through the walls being built. As a symbol of modern innovation, cement was mainly used in public architecture, and this cement was widely supplied through the Semal movement from 1970s to 1971. If you look at the houses built at the time, you can often see traditional tile-shaped roofs and cement walls combined. The cold gray concrete has become a symbol of modernization and development in modern architecture, not only in Korea but also around the world. Itaewon is said to be the first place refugees and migrant workers take their first steps. Centered around the Islamic mosque on the other side of the Hooker Hill, a new commercial area with halal food material stores, restaurants, bakeries, clothing stores, travel agency, and bookstores gradually formed a new unique community. Accordingly, Itaewon became a place that centrally supported the living foundation of Muslims in Seoul and the entire metropolitan area. While reading about the Palestinian solidarity protests that took place at the Central Mosque this year, I was able to learn about the various human rights activities in South Korea. One of them was a report published in 2020 on the human rights of the Palestinian women by ADI Human Rights Group, which supports and collaborates with communities affected by the conflicts in Asia. The report consists of personal narratives and interview testimonies of 13 women living in 4 villages in Nablus Governorate and includes the drawings and photographs of the parties involved. One of the most memorable stories I read was by a woman in her 60s who goes by the pseudonym Jamila from Asira al This drawing is a map of the village that Jamila drew while sharing her story. My name is Jamila. I'm 64 years old and I come from Asira al I worked as a teacher for 40 years and retired in October 2016. I have 11 siblings. In the past, there was no school, and the children studied in old buildings with a large hall called Amafada. This building is now used as the village council and has expanded to a 3-story building. For the second grade students, they rented another space near our Amafada. An important place in the village was the mosque, and in the 1960 to 1962, the village was small and the old city of Asira surrounded the mosque. Another important place was a cistern built by the Jordanian government, which was in the center of the village. The Assyria people used this cistern to draw water. It was one of the main places where women gathered and talked. I wanted to make this place into a culture center with a library, but it's now under the control of the illegal settlement of Izar, and the illegal settlement residents have cut off the water supply and robbed the reservoir to use it as a swimming pool. The scary place for me was the cemetery. When they were building the school, they told about the cemetery so that we wouldn't play during the day. The village is surrounded by illegal settlement to the east and concrete factories and quarries to the west, which cause diseases in the village. For me, the quarry is the most annoying place in the village. It pollutes the air in the village. However, since quarrying is almost the only job for many families in Sira, it's difficult to take action or express complaints about the quarry. I'm happy that our village has developed it and still developing. However, the new factories are affecting the trees in the village. I'm afraid the trees near the quarry and the factories will die in 4 years. The saddest place for me is my late parents' house and all the neighboring neighborhoods around it. I'm trying to forget the street, that is why I hate walking down it. Sometimes I cry when I think of all the memories I shared with my parents and neighbors. I'm now over 60 years old, but I've not been able to have beautiful memories since then. This testimony was written about 4 years ago. If Jamila was alive, she would be 68. I have never met Jamila and will never meet her, but the memories of the place where she lived, the memories of Asira, have become part of my memories. In her articles, Itaewon, a camp town to speculation town, a history of female exploitation of hatred and Novel-Libyan, Professor Kim Joo-hee describes how Americanism was transformed into internationalism in the 1990s with the trend towards globalization, how traces of the history of female exploitation was transformed into a new cultural tourism products by local governments and merchants, as Itaewon was designated as the first special tourist zone by the Seoul Metropolitan Government in 1997. Diversity is now just a well-packaged product. Here, I would like to ask you, what does it mean to you to be local? And what does it mean to be international? And how does this boundary shape our lives?